everybody can find a seat, we're ready to start. So good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. This is a fantastic turnout. I am First Selectman Vicki Tesoro, and thank you all for coming this evening. I want to do a couple of housekeeping things before we start the program, if I could. So I want to make sure, I know we have run out of some of the handouts, and people have raised their hand. If you didn't get a handout, please come up to us afterwards, give us your email, we'll send you one. Is this better? Yes. Good. Okay, I was just saying, if you did not get a handout, which consists of the frequently asked questions and the explanatory text for the referendum question, please come up to us afterwards and we will send you one if you give us your email, or you can go onto the town website. They're posted there as well. Okay? Index card and a pencil. If you need one and you didn't get one, raise your hand. We have people that will give you one. We've got somebody with their hand up right over here and up on that side and in the back. Okay, we ask you to write one question on a card, and please put your name on the card with the question. We will not read your name when we read the question. We just want you to put your name on it because we want to, if we can, answer as many questions as we can tonight. If you're wondering why we're using the index card method, it's really to allow us to get through more questions. The frequently asked questions that you may have looked at may have already answered a question that you have. And that's fine. If you want to ask it again, please feel free to do so. We've got hands up over on this side as well. So after you've written the card, also just raise your hand so we can come get it. So tonight we're following a similar format that we used last year. It's almost 1 year ago that we did a community forum for the Hillcrest Building School project. So this is, if you went to that one, you're going to see that we're doing almost exactly the same thing here, of course, with a different project. So before I make my brief remarks, I'm going to introduce this evening's speakers. So I'm going to start here with Dan Shopik, who's our town attorney. Wave your hand, Dan, or people can't see you back there. Our town director of human services, Michelle Jacob. Our town's Director of Public Works, George Estrada. The town's financial advisor with Phoenix Advisors, that's Matt Sperndell. We have our architects from QA&M Architecture, Tom Arcari and Rocco Petito. And our town's Economic and Community Development Director, Rena Backlar, is she there? No. It's somebody else. I will introduce Lori. She's coming. She's at the Planning and Zoning meeting, and she will be joining us in a little bit. And also, we've got the chairman of the Community Facilities Building Committee here, Lori Hayes O'Brien. And while we give that shout out to the chairman, we also have members of that building committee here today as well, or tonight. Can you stand if you're a member of the Community Facilities Building Committee, please? Okay, great. So I'm just going to make a very brief remarks and then we'll proceed with the program. So again, thank you for coming this evening for this information session. As a candidate for First Selectman, I promised to bring a viable plan forward to the community that would replace the aging senior center on Priscilla Place and to give our residents the opportunity to decide via a referendum if this project should move forward. The Trumbull Town Council voted in July of this year in a bipartisan manner to approve a bond authorization in the amount of $27,115,000 for this project. In accordance with our town charter, if any bond authorization exceeds $15 million indexed for inflation, that automatically triggers a town referendum. This referendum will allow Trumbull voters to vote yes or no at the November 4th municipal election to fund this project. This includes voting by absentee ballot and early voting. It is not my decision, or the decision of the Board of Finance, or the Town Council to approve this project. You, our citizens, will vote and decide if this project will move forward. It is your choice, and I support your right to decide, and I will support that decision no matter the outcome. My job at this time, and the job of our town government, is to give you complete, transparent, and unbiased information so that you can make an informed decision when you vote. Tonight is one step in that process. So I ask you to please listen carefully to all of our speakers. And if you have more questions at the conclusion of this program, please feel free to contact me in my office. Okay, with all that being said, we're going to start the presentation now. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan Chopik, who is our town attorney, because one of the handouts you received was the explanatory text for the referendum question that will appear on the ballot. So I'm going to ask Dan to give us some more information about that document.
Thank you, Vicki. Can I be heard in the back?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody has a copy of the explanatory text. Vicki has given me the unenviable task of trying to explain this. And what I can say is, I'm not going to read it to you tonight. Under the state statutes, in our vote of the town council, the town clerk has prepared an explanatory text which discusses what exactly this project is going to be. The referendum question, as you see it there, is required by the town charter. So it's a yes or no question. Are we voting for or are we voting against? And that is posed in the town charter. Your choice is to vote for it's a senior community center. The total cost that is to be approved or not approved is $27 million, as Vicki said, $27,115,000 and no cents. And and that's a vote, as I said, it's for or against. The explanatory text which you've been given is available on the town's website and is going to be handed out at the polls. It's going to be handed out to anybody. It's going to be sent to anybody who has requested an absentee ballot. And along with, and at the polls, there'll be renderings that you see here. Again, this is not the final, everybody understands, this is not the final building that's to be built. This is a rendering, and the final plans and specifications are only going to be pursued if there's a positive vote, a yes vote, at the time of the election. I trust that the presentation that you're going to see tonight is going to answer a lot of the questions that you have with regard to this project. The architects are here. We have George Estrada is here. The building committee is here. The financial people are here, and that's really what's going to tell you how you feel about voting for or against. But remember, it's a yes or no. We're not talking today about should it be a $30 million project, should it be a $22 million project. We have one project that's on the line, and it's either yes or no. Thank you.
Okay. So next speaker is Michelle Jacob, our Director of Human Services.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So I know we've just heard the details about the referendum question and the process, but tonight I really wanted to focus on spending a few minutes of bringing the current senior center to life and what we do telling you what a senior center is and who we serve and why it matters, and why it matters and it's a value to the residents of Trumbull. Senior centers operate all across the country and all around the world. And we actually have models that we follow, and there's evidence-based theories and reasons as to why senior centers exist. There's the National Institute of Senior Centers, who is an organization of the National Council on Aging. They're the ones who set standards for senior centers, come up with models for current, present, future, train staff, and make sure we have the resources we need to stay effective and efficient in serving older adults. Their goal is to ensure that older adults are thriving in their communities, staying out of isolation and excelling and aging in place, which is very important. A senior center, it's not a bingo room, it's not a gym. And I've heard it all, and it's okay to not know what we do. If you've never needed a senior center before, or you haven't had someone in your life you care about use it, you probably don't know what it is, and that's okay. People walk in and say, how many residents live here? We look at them scratching our heads. But we are an activity center, for one. We're membership-based. You need to be 55 and over to join. And you can participate in all of our activities and programs that we offer, which we will show. And make sure I'm on the right slide. But it's really important to understand that we all know what a senior center is and why we care so much about what we do. The National Institute of Senior Centers, it defines them as places that connect older adults to vital community services, helping them stay healthy and independent. Through programs, services, and connections, senior centers transform lives, strengthen the community, and provide a lifeline for seniors facing isolation while helping them maintain dignity, purpose, and independence. If you ask those of us that work in a center, and a lot of my staff are here tonight, thank you for coming, we would describe it a little differently. And I did ask my staff, a senior center is where caregivers and the people they love find support and a place to start breathing again. It's for the woman and her spouse that live on a street in town who juggle work, carpool duties, sporting schedules for their kids, and meals, while caring for her recently widowed mom who just moved in with them and needs rides to the doctors and the pharmacy and is lonely all day waiting for them to come home, needing their attention. A senior center is a place that offers grief groups for recent widows and widowers who are struggling with loss and loneliness in their identity. When they walk through our doors, they find a home, somewhere they are embraced, safe, and understood. Before long, they're staying after their support group to join a class or a workshop, share lunch with a friend, and maybe even volunteer. They become a regular member and they regain their life again. We get to witness people rediscover life and find friendships, purpose, and joy. Lastly, a senior center is a place that works with local police to support the isolated and neglected seniors they discover. We work with EMS to determine how we can prevent those repetitive falls from happening that they're constantly seeing in the community. We work with protective services to prevent elder abuse. We work with local businesses who turn to us when they notice one of their customers in need. People call us because they know we can change lives, and we help their lives. So who do we serve? We serve the entire community. I mentioned what it is to be a member and to participate, but we serve the community because almost every one of us is connected to an older adult. If you need help finding affordable housing for your grandmother, call us. Right here, Jen Gillis, she's the person to go to. If you need help changing your Medicare D plan, it's complicated. Not everyone can figure out Medicare. We're really good at it. Come visit us. You need help getting your neighbor assistance. You're worried about your neighbor who you know is alone. You're not sure they're eating. Their clothes might look a little dirty and you don't know what to do. Give us a call. That is what we are here for. We're not just serving the seniors. We are serving our entire community. And lastly, why senior centers make a difference. I think I may have made that clear, but we provide connection. Nearly 1 in 3 adults over the age of 50 report feeling lonely. The center gives people a place to belong and make friends. Health and well-being. Loneliness is linked to higher risk of depression, dementia, and heart disease and stroke. And our programs help people stay active and engaged, help them, again, age in place. We want to keep people out of institutions, healthy, feeling well. And community value. The center is a visible sign that Trumbull cares for its olders and its older residents. It's a gathering place that strengthens our community. So I'll finally get to the first slide. We currently have just over 1,000 members. Our membership year is July 1 to June 30th, so that's obviously going to grow. Come next July, it'll restart. But our membership has continued to grow over the years. And I'm sure I'm looking at, over the past 3 years, participation has doubled. Are we good? Okay, so yeah, over the last 3 years, participation has doubled from about 11,000 visits in 2022 to nearly 24,000 in 2024. And actual usage is likely even higher. I just want to clarify, when I say visit, that doesn't mean that many individuals, but when you come to the center, you check in at our check-in station, and we count one visit if you're coming and you check off one box for attending one event. But if you attend 5, you are checked off for 5. So it just goes to show our participation numbers are growing quickly, and it means that people are coming back. So our participation rates, let's see. These numbers come from our membership sign-in system, and that gives us a pretty reliable view of participation, but about 20% of people usually forget to check in or renew their membership. So actual usage is likely even higher, and you all know it. I can see all of you sitting in there. But you know, what this shows is that our members are coming back, and they're engaged, and they continue to use the facility. Participation's grown dramatically. Our attendance is high relative to our membership, and again, that's because it is a hub of connection for people. We do have some limitations. We host over 2,000 programs a year, but the number of programs we can offer has plateaued due to our spacing limitations. Our current building cannot meet the growing demand now or in the future. I don't know who's doing the slides, but thank you. This is an idea of all the programs that we offer and the categories they're in. You know, we have every type of workshop you can imagine, every kind of education topic. There's so many individuals in this audience right now that I see that have come and presented their knowledge, whether it's on the Constitution, on financial assistance. I think we've had Public Works come and talk about how it operates in town. So there's many of you here that have come and provided your professional services to our seniors. We offer a great lunch program. That's probably where you're gonna see our aging seniors that are hanging on to their independence. They're using our transportation services to and from the center. It's guaranteeing them not only a healthy meal, instead of opening one can of soup, but they're getting out of the home, they're engaging, and they're in conversation with friends instead of staying at home isolated. And then up there on the end, we have essential services and critical lifelines. I don't know if everyone knows, but our social services department and our food pantry are located at the senior center. So in addition to our participation numbers, what's not included in that is our social service numbers. Our social services staff, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in your database you have 540 registered current clients. That does not count for drop-ins or people coming in for information. Our food pantry has seen over 350 families this year. Some use the pantry once, some come daily, some come weekly, some come monthly. So we are an active, busy site serving this community, and it's important that everyone recognizes how much we do. And lastly, senior transportation. We are lucky to have state grants. We have 3 vehicles, and we provide transportation services to seniors in this community that don't drive or should not be driving. Within the last 12 months, we've provided 7,313 rides to seniors. 3,696 were to the senior center. 1944 were for grocery shopping trips. 827 to the doctors. And the rest, 846 were to the salon, the bank, to visit their spouse in a skilled nursing facility, or Social Security office, and so on. So we have a lot going on at our facility. We are a fully functioning operation, and I'm very impressed and proud of my staff for being all they're able to do in what we have. And lastly, for the last slide, you know, why new space is needed. I think everybody here has heard about the condition of our building. We don't need to get into that. But our building was never designed to be a senior center. The staff are doing their best to create programming in what we are given, but it doesn't exactly work. We've stretched as far as we can, but it's too small and it's limiting to what we can offer. As more and more seniors are coming to us looking for connection and health and support, we're forced to turn people away. And those are the very opportunities that we're hoping to help them thrive with. So the new design that has been created gives us flexibility that we don't have today. It gives multi-purpose rooms that we can adapt for different programs and group sizes, dedicated areas for wellness, counseling, and community gatherings that won't compete for the same space. Currently, if we'd like to host a large event for the holidays where a lot of seniors find themselves alone, we have to cancel all of our exercise classes during the day because we're using that same room. And that impacts all those seniors that count on that exercise program. So we're doing our best, but there is a need that we can't meet. And because the new facility would meet widely recognized standards, it would also allow us to pursue national accreditation in the future from the National Institute of Senior Centers. That means top quality programming, community confidence, and access to additional resources and opportunities, including grants, and helping us serve our residents even better. The last thing I want to mention, while our center is designed for older adults, it touches multiple generations, seniors, pre-retirees, families. Right now, senior center staff are dealing with 3 generations alone, the silent generation, the baby boomers, and Gen X. So I challenge all of you to try to come up with programming that meets all of their needs. And you guys are doing a really good job. But we have a diverse group of individuals coming in this community who want their needs met, and we are doing our best to serve all of them. But in addition to them, we also serve families, the sandwich generation, and children. You know, I always get to talk about this magical evening because I do stay late at the senior center nights to come to meetings like this. And the building's quiet. Next thing you know is you see some kids running across the lawn with a few parents. And it's not well known, but the senior center currently has a lot of community use going on already. And that's offered by our Parks and Recreation Department. They're small programs, but I've been able to watch them offer youth art classes, guitar, ukulele lessons. There's a food explorers program, youth cooking classes. We have roller skating, indoor roller skating. And I believe our youth theater also hosts all their auditions and practices at the senior center. So it is really nice to see that building turnover and a different generation use it and appreciate it. So thank you, everybody, I appreciate it.
I think I want to start by saying thank you for everything that you do and an incredible team that you have to pull off what you do in the facilities that you have. The aging facility at 23 Priscilla Place was constructed in 1920, so it's over 100 years old at this point, and well past its useful life. I'll just highlight some of the things behind me here because there are more up here than what I'll be just mentioning. Failing windows. We have a limited number of operable windows in that building at this point because the windows really need to be completely replaced. Roof replacement, the Spanish tile roof that is on there is, I believe, original. It is a heavy loaded roof, it's very, very heavy. We've arrived at a point where we're going to need to remove that roof to reinforce the subsurface in order to maintain the integrity of that roof. Outdated boiler system. The boiler system there was last replaced in the 1980s. And we have been holding that together. It's doing its work, but it's not in the distant future where that will pretty much come to its end of life. Air conditioning in that building is limited at best. We operate in the areas that are used for activities. We temper those spaces for the seniors with mobile units because we've had a number of systems at that building that have completely failed and need to be replaced. Elevators need replacement. This week we had one of the 2 elevators go down, and because of their age, we've been told that will be down probably for about 2 weeks because it's not, parts are not readily available. So that demonstrates the challenges for ADA in the building. And water issues. The building was constructed in what was historically a wetland area and a stream originally on old Trumbull maps. You can see that there was a stream that actually went under, that basically is underneath the building. And what that does is that just creates a very damp environment. So when we have heavy rain and periods of moisture, those are challenging in the building. So that always is creating an issue for the occupants. Accessibility is probably one of the most important things for a senior center, obviously. We all know that. The limited ADA compliance, the failing elevators feed into that and highlight how sensitive the situation is in the building. Inadequate accessible parking. We do not have enough parking at the site, and with some of the programs that Michelle just mentioned, there are certainly more than 54 people for the 54 spots that are currently on site. So we end up with people parking across the street on Huntington and walking across that super highway. And that's not something that we would suggest the youngest person in the world to do, let alone someone that has mobility challenges. Space problems in the building. The building was, as Michelle mentioned, originally an elementary school. It's compartmentalized. It presents incredible challenges for them to present their programming because they have to make it work. So that building, it needs to be reconfigured and opened up inside in order for the programming as is planned with the new facility, should that be approved, that we would be able to deliver that. And the gym is a very small gym, which limits the number of participants and also the number of activities that can be in there. So the question, how much for a renovation? Consulting with the market, the conservative estimate that I have at this point is over $20 million to renovate the existing building as new. And that's including expansion of the site, which may require eminent domain. To remain at the existing site, the building will need to be expanded, as well as creating the adequate handicap accessible parking on site, which is critical. And in closing, what I will say is we no longer can delay capital repairs if we stay in that building. So we will have to make some very serious decisions short term to do what we're going to need to do if we decide that that's where the senior center will remain. So there has been, let me just look at this for a second. The next one forward. So just an example of what this building will also support. And this is primarily after hours, after the senior programming that happens throughout the day. Currently, Michelle mentioned some of the programs that are occurring in there already. This is a listing of programs that also are programs within the recreation department, is supported through the recreation department, but also if you look at later on, civic groups, scouting groups, support groups, community meetings, and town government meetings such as this. This is the type of activity that building will be able to support in the hours that it's not occupied gainfully by the seniors. So the importance of that is that we utilize as many hours as possible throughout the week with these type of activities, and it's not just occupied during the day hours.
Hello. I just want to make sure everybody knows that the senior center is a safe place for our seniors right now. I don't want you to think with the issues that we've talked about here that it's not safe for them. And that senior center has gone under renovation before. There's been some years ago, correct? There's some major renovations. Obviously, otherwise it was an elementary school, now it turned into a senior center. There was a renovation to do that, and there was another renovation after that. And Anthony Musto, when he was the state senator, was able to get a grant for a new kitchen to be put into the senior center. So I don't want everyone to think that, if our seniors are not safe in that building.
Great. Good evening. It's good to see so many people here this evening. It's a great turnout. A lot of the faces are familiar, and I appreciate the neighbors and the local community coming out. They've been a part of the process over the last couple of years and been very vocal. And a lot of the feedback that we've received from the public has been very helpful in determining or establishing our final solution. But there are a lot of faces here that I haven't seen before. My name is Tom Arcari. I'm principal of QA&M Architecture. I have Rocco Petito, project architect, here with me this evening. So I'd like to give you an overview of the project, and so you have a little bit of an idea of how we got to where we are. So I've been working with the town for 10 years on this project. I was engaged in 2015 by the town, and the process started. At that time, the first selectman was First Selectman Herbst, and he got the ball rolling on this process. And a lot of the background work that formed the foundation for the design you're going to see tonight happened in the first few years of this exercise. Michelle was a brand new director of the senior center and brought a lot of fresh air to the facility and a lot of new ideas, progressive ideas, that were in keeping with standards of current senior center design and operation. But here what you can see is in 2024, we were asked to compile a study of all the work that we had done over the prior 9 years. And this was just a short outline of those services. But in 2016 through 17, we did a significant amount of public outreach, public information meetings, meeting with different senior centers, meeting with the staff at the senior center to really determine what are the needs of the center. That foundation really sort of identifies the goal. How big of a building does it really have to be to meet the long-term future needs of the community? At the same time, trying to focus on the goal of meeting the future needs of the peak of the baby boom, which is projected for about 2035. Over the years, we did that outreach. We looked at numerous sites. The town had numerous sites that we explored. Some were approved, some were not approved. The program grew and contracted. At one point, we looked at having a pool in the facility, and that was kiboshed. We actually had a specific committee just to explore the possibility of having a pool in the facility. But the community decided that the senior center wasn't the right spot for it. Later on, there was a property available, and towards 23 to 24, we did evaluation of, well, prior to that was the Churchill Road site study. Then we looked at Hardy Lane, and that study was ongoing when the Grace Church property became available. I'll come back to that. So this was a map that we used pretty frequently to demonstrate visually where the different sites were, how we evaluated some of the sites. And in this map, the Grace Hill Church property, 5958 Main Street, is highlighted as the orange circle. And you can see that there's a lot of reasons why sites are considered desirable, but one of the big reasons is accessibility and central to the community's demographic. And Churchill Road and Hardy Lane were both very close to the center of town, close to those services, and this made this site very desirable. So we started looking at the program, and this is a revised version of the final program which shows how we came up with the projected size of the building at approximately 30,000 square feet. All of these components make up the building, things like, and when we put the program together, we looked at all of these things individually. Entry vestibule, how big does it have to be? 10 foot by 10 foot, what needs to be in it? Downdraft heaters, operable doors, all the little elements of every space are identified in the detailed assessment. And when we look at that, and then we assign square footage to those needs, and then look at all the spaces, we can tabulate those and get a target square footage for the building. Now that doesn't mean that the building is 30,000 square feet. The one I'm going to show you this evening and the one that the community is pursuing is a little bit smaller than that. The size goes up and down depending on efficiencies and plan layout, but this was the ideal goal, reinforced in many different ways to meet the long-term flexible needs of the center. This is a picture of the Grace Church property. Here is Main Street. Here is the existing church. This is the preschool, and this is the rectory building at the back. You can also see directly adjacent to it is the Long Hill Active Adult Community, and then Edgewood Road properties. The proposed center would be a two-story center that's built into the grade, so there would be access from the front of the building and then access to the rear of the building. The site would have two entrances. We'd maintain the southernmost street access. You'd have parking at the upper level, have a drive-under porte cochere where patrons can get off the senior bus or out of their car and enter the building under protection from the elements, and then access back to Main Street. Additionally, there is an access drive to the rear of the site where there is more parking and entrance to the lower level of the building. There is also room at the site for overflow parking, which would be used infrequently, but it would be grass parking in times of events if there was a need for greater parking. One of the keys to this solution was building the building partially into the grade so that the mass of the structure could be relatively small, low from Main Street. Let me go back. And here's an overview of the building juxtaposed on the site. Some of the other amenities that you can see is that there's a small lawn off the multi-purpose room. This could be an outdoor activity space. There's access to the rear of the building on both sides. There is a secondary entrance on the north side of the building that provides access to the social services department of the building. This is a diagram that shows the proposed building and massing juxtaposed against the existing church, the existing preschool building, and the rectory in the back. And you can see that the new building occupies approximately the same width and depth of those buildings. The upper level of the building, which is accessed from Main Street, I've turned this around. Main Street in this diagram is now at the top of the screen. The upper level of the plan houses the majority of what I would call the senior center proper activities. You come in through the main front entry vestibule, and to one side is the administration offices, which have a window to the main lobby, administrative offices, and human service, social services offices adjacent. And then to the other side is what we call a soft library or lounge. This can be used for soft classroom, This can be used for book reading events. This can be used for patrons waiting for their ride. Many of the seniors actually rely on public transport, senior bus, ride share, or family rides. This is a good waiting space, and it's a socialization center. One of the challenges in senior center design is making sure there's enough socialization space in the center. As Michelle hinted at, socialization is the key to prolonging our life as seniors. We really want to develop spaces where seniors can get out of their home, come and interact with society, communicate with their friends, just sit and watch people come and go, take part of programs, or have a meeting space as pre-function space before and after classes. And there's very little of that, if none, at the current center. And what you'll see in this design is a spine of socialization spaces that are all off of the activity spaces. And that's really what's going to make this center successful. So after the main lobby, what you'll find is down the spine that goes to the back of the building, it's terminated by a cafe space, which is as simple as a seating area, games and cards area, with a counter that can be used as a bar or food service, or a center for pre-function activities. And all along the spine are games room, arts and crafts room, and then on the other side, the multi-purpose room. The multifunction room is a large space, approximately 3,000 square feet, that can be divided into 3 specific rooms, or it can be broken up into 2 in 1, or 1 large space. It's sized to accommodate approximately 250 people at a sit-down meal when it's in its biggest configuration. That room has a small platform for performers and dedicated storage at the north side of the space. That room looks out across the green roof to the east of the site. Across the hall from that are activity classrooms, again, that can be divided in half for multi-functions and flexibility. And then finally, in the southwest corner is a full-service kitchen that can provide 3 functions. It can be a full-service kitchen, it can be a catering kitchen, or a warming kitchen to provide all the long-term flexibility the facility would need. Adjacent to the multifunction room is an outdoor covered sitting area, covered porch, and then some flat lawn area. One of the keys to a successful senior and community center, and I can talk about that a little bit, is flexibility. One of the things the current center doesn't have is flexibility. It has a few spaces, but those spaces are used for all of the same functions. Primarily, the biggest issue is all of the exercise and activity functions take place in the entertainment area, where you would have meals as well. So whenever there's a meal, like lunchtime, no activities can happen, no exercise can happen. So separating those 2 functions is critical. So you'll see in this design that we have an entertainment multi-purpose space, and then down below we will have activity, function, exercise space. By creating spaces that are divisible, Michelle now has 11 different spaces to run programs in that can all happen concurrently. So her capacity for programming will grow dramatically, even though the difference between the existing building, which is about 22,000 square feet, is only being increased by about 6,000 square feet. The key is this building will be significantly more efficient in its layout. The lower level of the building will only be a partial level, and it happens down on the east side of the site. One of the reasons we could accommodate this is because the site drops off to the back approximately 10 to 15 feet. So we're building the gym, the fitness rooms, storage, an observation office, and the food pantry into that lower level area. That's an area that will have very high ceilings and is accessed from the rear entrance of the site. You can see here in the center of the main upper level spine is a grand stair. This grand stair will connect the two levels as well as an elevator bank over by the cafe. When you come down the stairs, there's another lower level lobby space that, again, serves as pre-function for those activities. This food pantry space and human services space will be able to be opened up to this exterior patio so patrons that use the human services and food pantry can access that directly from the lower level or even from the patio. And then at the lower level, again, we have an exercise gym. The exercise gym has changed over the years in its iteration. Some people may have heard at some point that it was a large middle school gym. At this point, as a part of this process, the gym is really senior focused, so it will be able to accommodate indoor pickleball. If you've been to the senior center, they're doing pickleball in their multi-function auditorium space, and the court literally just goes to the edges. But there's one court, and if they're doing pickleball, then they can't do their exercise classes. So having fitness space and having that duplication is valuable. Additionally, this space can be used for all sorts of senior activities and small recreation events. I'd like to point out that the project is called a senior community center, and there's been a lot of conversation about it being a community center. The goal is that this is a senior center, but most senior centers throughout the state of Connecticut are now being designed as community serving because they're the same building. A community center and a senior center have the same spaces. They have multifunction meeting rooms. They have a dining and entertaining space. They'll have an arts and crafts room. They'll have a games room. So physically, the spaces are the same, with some of the only differences being that in a senior center, you'll see more things, more amenities, more details that support patrons with physical challenges. So the space is essentially built as a community center. So when we say it's a senior and community center, it's important to note that it's a senior center that has the capacity to serve community events, particularly in the off hours. It's also important to note that the center has the opportunity to support intergenerational programming. A lot of senior centers now have activities during the day where seniors are interacting with children, preschool children, not school-age children. And then in the evenings, the center can be used for community meetings, etc. Finally, I'd like to point out, I wish I remembered the gentleman's name, but this final configuration of the lower level was the result of feedback that we received from the general public. Over the last year and a half, we've had a number of public meetings, some contentious. That's okay. There's a lot of good feedback that comes out of those meetings, and as a result of some of that feedback, we've been able to change the building to directly reflect a lot of the comments that were made by the neighbors and local residents. That includes, we actually pushed the building backwards. Originally, the building was much bigger at the lower level, and we pushed the lower level down the sheet to the east and eliminated all of the proposed rock excavation that was going to be in this area. And by making the building deeper, we were able to make it skinnier, so we increased the buffers to the adjacent neighbors. All the while making the building more cost effective. So this is a 3D image showing the massing of the building. You can see that at the Main Street elevation, it's basically a one-story building. It is a commercial building, so in total height, it's really like 1.5 stories when you compare it to a residential home. But it's 1 story, and here's the porte cochere and the parking and the drop-off. And you can see that 1 story wraps the corner, and the access road to the rear of the site goes down the hill. Also here are massing models of the adjacent structures. This is what the building looks from the rear of the site, and you can see what I mean by at the rear of the site, it's 2 stories tall, but that lower portion of the building is tucked into the grade. And you can see we're actually proposing a green roof off of the multifunction space and a small patio off the arts and crafts room. One unique thing about the massing is we designed the building to have this central well. So all of the mechanical units will be on the roof, but they won't be visible from the street or the neighbors. They're going to be hidden up on the center of the roof. This is a photo montage we put together of the building as you approach from the south. So it's on the right, and you can see that the building from Main Street is essentially 1 story in height. And here's a view of the center from the north entrance. And you can get a look of it headed down towards the rear entrance drive. This is important because we spent a lot of time developing the site architecture, particularly in response to feedback that we received from the community. And you can see that the buffers, and this is the buffer to the north side, have a combination of retaining wall elements and fencing to ensure not only that there's visual privacy between the center and the neighbors, but also acoustic privacy. And here's a view at the rear of the entrance drive. And this is what the back of the facility looks like. Finally, this is a view looking at the south border, which we propose to maintain a lot of the fully grown trees and then add a lower row of shrubbery to create a visual connection, or to remove the visual connection and create a more dense connection. And then I want to see if I can actually make that happen. That's not going to happen. Kate's going to make that happen. Kate actually did all the work. We're talking head. Well, maybe she'll make it work. Can you make it work? There you go. So this gives you a feel of what the center will look like, massing, detail. You can see that the building has all residential architectural styling, pretty traditional in scale and finishes. And with that, I would like to have Rocco Petito, my project architect, show you a little bit of the interior and what it might look like.
I guess what I'd first like to say is, you know, it's not just Tom and I that do this work, as you just mentioned. Kate did a lot of, right? Gotta hold it close. So Kate was responsible for a lot of the images that you saw here tonight and instrumental in helping us put this together. Also, we have Damaris Martinez, our interior designer. And I kind of voluntold her to give me a statement. So I'm going to read it. The design embraces a coastal palette accented with warm hues, creating bright and spacious atmospheres. Large storefront windows are strategically placed to allow ample light, natural light, to fill the interior. Upon entering the grand foyer, welcoming visitors, guiding them smoothly and intuitively into the space. Well said. So here's a picture of the main entrance from the drive-under, which is what one would see when they drive up and get dropped off. You can see that there's light that goes in not only to the lobby, but the offices adjacent to it on the left, and also the waiting area that's on the right. So this is an image of the main entry, right, that brings you right into the main corridor, which is really the connector to all those active spaces that Tom was talking about. It will be well lit. As you can see, the soft classroom on the right, where the pre-function space is there for not only the multi-purpose room, but also can be used flexibly for a classroom type of scenario, and waiting for the bus or somebody to get picked up. As you look to the right, you see there's a media wall that will show people what the functions are, and you're drawn down to the hallway, which brings you to the cafe. So this is a look at the cafe with a bar that's actually out in front of the games room. And you have a view onto the kind of the outdoor roof there, but then as you walk down, you get a view out to the east, you know, looking over the Paquan Valley. Again, this cafe and this area, this corridor, links all those active spaces, not only with just being able to walk, or you look at a gallery that may be mounted on the wall, but you have that function space. Pre-function for the media room, pre-function for the arts room, pre-function for the games room. And then you have a view of the stair that goes downstairs. So this is the big 3,000 square foot multi-purpose room. This is what it would look like opened up. You can see the tables, the chairs, the people. And then this is what you might see if there was an event there where they closed down a third of it, right? So you have the platform where you could have a lecture, you could have Tom's garage band perform. But then both of these spaces also have multiple windows that allow natural light in. You have the access to the outside at all times with it. And this is the arts and crafts room. Again, as you look at these spaces, the intent for us was to make all of these flexible. So this here is the arts room, but it could be a regular classroom. Somebody could do a lecture. They could do many, many things. There's a view of the games room. You see for multiple games, whether it's board games or table games, video games. And then here's a view of the multi-athletic room. So we have it set up here for pickleball, but I just found out tonight they could do rollerblading. And it also could be set up, it's a high enough room to where we could have senior basketball or some other high volume bouncing ball sports. As you enter into the lower lobby, this links to the connection to the upstairs, right? But you also have this pre-function space not only for the gym, the exercise room towards the back, the fitness room towards the back, and also the food pantry. And I'll turn it back to Tom.
One thing I'd like to point out about the multi-sport fitness area, or let's call it the senior gym, is that the gym has been a hot potato in the design for a long time. And there was many different iterations of the gym. And it started out as a large middle school sized gym with cross courts and a high school performance sized basketball court. And there really was a lot of, I'll just say it, uproar from the neighbors in particular, because the concern that would bring basketball tournaments and lots of traffic on the weekends. And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that's the idea. And I just really want to point out that, you know, the whole process has been fulfilling because we've received a lot of feedback. And as a result, this activity area is been downsized to specifically address the senior needs, 2 pickleball courts, senior basketball, informal activities, but will not be in a position to service large communal basketball or sport activities. And the feedback that we received from the neighbors really informed this decision as well as many others. So when the design was essentially put together, we had a cost estimate, and the cost estimate was not this one. Maybe many of you were at the town council meeting about 6 months ago where we presented the project and town council said, "I think you can do better, Tom." That was a good time, by the way. For those of you who got to watch me squirm, I think you would have appreciated it. But again, I think the back and forth that we've had with the community, not just the neighbors or the public, but also your elected representatives, while sometimes uncomfortable, has been very positive. So we went back to the drawing board and we reconfigured the building. I mentioned the gentleman from the public who had a good idea about how to reconfigure the building. Eventually I'll find out who it was. Maybe that person's here this evening. But we reconfigured the building, and by reconfiguring the building, we were able to eliminate a significant amount of rock removal, which also benefited the neighbors, because one of the neighbors' concerns was what's going to happen when you're blasting and removing that rock, and how does it affect our homes? So it was a win-win decision because it eliminated the rock removal, but it also eliminated a lot of cost. And with some refinements and some, let's say, removal of foofy architectural items that may have been over the top. Don't blame me, I try really hard. But we reduced the cost of the project by almost $5 million. And we took it back to town council, and town council applauded the efforts that we made to get it here. So it really was a collaborative effort, and I was very pleased at the end, because I think the project that we're getting is a great project. I'm excited for this project, and I'm very proud of it. To establish the costs, we had 3 different cost estimators do estimates of the project. Those estimates came in at $20,700,000, $20,500,000, and $21,600,000. We had two that were very tight together, which tells me that was the good number. But the third estimate is hard to ignore. So we established a mean between the numbers of $21 million for the actual hard costs. That's bricks and mortar, shovels, nails, roofing, etc. So that's a good defended number. Then below that, we added all of the project costs that a project needs to have, including testing and hazardous materials assessment and removal, building permit costs, legal fees, architecture fees, owner's representative fee, furniture, furnishings, and equipment for the building. And then as you go down the list, you'll see things like technology, drawing reproduction, construction escalation. This is something that has to be factored in. If, the goal would be to build this in the spring, but 6 months from now, the construction will be about 1.5% to 2% more expensive than it is today. So you have to factor that in. And then owner's contingency and CM contingency works out to be about $6 million in soft costs. This is actually a pretty good number relative to the overall. Usually we see soft costs anywhere from 20% on very, very large projects to about 35%. This falls in line, I believe, right around 21%. So I think maybe just above that. I think it's a good number. We've confirmed this with the committee and the town. And when combined, it gives us a total estimated project cost of $27 million and change. So we're confident in this number. It's been tested by the marketplace and by the contractors, and we're happy to present that to the community, which ultimately will go to referendum. So I guess the next big question is, all right, how do we pay for it? And with that, I will turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Tom and Rocco. Big round of applause for them again. So, just for perspective, I'm Matt Spurndle, the town's municipal advisor. I've been working with the town for a few years. I'm just having a career flash as we're talking, and I did, as a 28, 29-year-old, the Trumbull High School presentation. And my oldest son was just a twinkle in our eyes at that point. Now he's a freshman at RPI in the School of Architecture, and next, from the architect. And I'm much closer to being able to join the community center. I live in town, but I think I may just come and pay the guest fees because it's outstanding. So anyway, to give you that perspective, and we've done everything since the high school. So my job is not as exciting as all the wonderful things that the center has to offer, or why you need it, potentially a new one, or how awesome the new one's going to look. It's how much is it going to cost. But it's not as exciting, but I think the one thing you will appreciate is I only have 3 slides. So we're gonna work through it pretty quickly. Just again, quick overview, things that you've already heard, the 27115. This, again, is the total amount the town would be authorizing. So to the extent that construction costs come in lower, or the state's able to, or the town's able to acquire some grants from the state or wherever, to the extent that they don't need to bond, they would only bond what they actually need, and the rest could be potentially rescinded. So Rena will get into that in the next few slides after I'm done. But just for somebody, an idea of what the initial plan is we'd be issuing bonds in September of 26, September of 27. We just assume splitting it into 2 equal pieces, through the course of the construction. And typical to the other bonds we've done so many times, 20 years, equal principal payment, declining interest as we move along. And the goal here is to evaluate the impact strictly on the taxpayer. So not necessarily talking about impacts to the town budget or those kinds of things, but strictly to the taxpayer. Fortunately, the town is in excellent shape from a credit rating perspective at a AA plus, one notch from a AAA. Excellent market access, gets tons of bids on the bonds when we do them, and it always demands among the lowest rates that we'll see in the state, which is great. Low rate is good. Obviously, the less interest we're paying. So with that being said, we'll go to the next slide. So just to give an idea and some assumptions and definitions, because sometimes we just take for granted some of the terms we throw around, because that's just what we do every day. But just going through some of the things that get put into the analysis is, what the budget increases are going to be on a year-over-year basis. And we put, it's about 3.5. The grand list growth, we put 1%. So the grand list is your total tax base, which is, residential, commercial, the base with which you derive your revenues to pay for things. The mill rate is a dollar per thousand of assessment. So if you had a $1,000 assessed car, or whatever, and it was a 32 mill rate, you'd be paying $32 on that $1,000 assessment. Just to reiterate what your actual home assessment is it's really supposed to be 70% of market value. Now, I'm not going to get into the timing, how it works with the state and revaluations every 5 years and those kinds of things, but basically it's 70% of market value. So, for example, if your home value is $500,000, meaning you could sell your house for $500,000, the assessment is the $500,000 times 0.7, which would be $350. So then the mill rate, whether it's 32, what have you, would be applied to the $350, not the $500,000. Okay, and that's important in the next slide because we're going to show you how to do some of your own math in your head on an envelope with a little pen or something, or on your phone, just to kind of get an idea, because everyone in this room may love the community center, may love the pictures, but you all have different assessments. You all have different home values, so you have all different scenarios. So we try to give you the tool to be able to kind of get an idea of what the impact might be for your own particular situation. So we're looking at $100,000 of assessment, okay? And we all know nobody lives in that house. And most likely it's $148,000 or whatever that comes out to in market value. So that middle gray little table there, it says, senior center impact to $100,000 assessment. So for this project, assuming the interest rates that I used, and assuming the structuring I used, and the timing of the bond issues I used, which are numerous, there's a lot of moving parts, the grand list assumptions, your impact on your tax bill is that middle column. So fiscal year 25 and 26, it's 0, obviously because we were issuing the bonds in September 26. And then we start to pay the interest on the first bond in 27, and that's like $9.45 to that first year, again, per $100,000 of assessment. And then it goes to 30.95 up to 42, and then it levels off and starts to decline as the interest starts to be paid off as you're paying down those principal payments. So, what does that mean? Well, for example, on the right, if your home, going back to that example we used before, if your home value is $500,000, we know that your assessment is $350, we talked about before. So for that, just for example, just a quick math, for fiscal 28, if the impact to $100,000 is $30.95, but we want to get from $100,000 to $350, we take that, multiply it by 3.5, and for that year, your amount of your taxes that would need to go to this would be about $108. I put the cents in there and all that stuff. These are all estimates, but that's how you would calculate it. And alternatively, if you look at my little box on the left, just saying, if your assessment is 600, just for, again, purposes of examples, that's the home value is around 860,000. You would just take those numbers in the middle and you would multiply them by 6. So it tries to make it at least easy to try to figure that out. Obviously, we're issuing 20-year bonds. I only have 12 or so years, because if I made it any smaller, you wouldn't be able to see anything. So it just continues to go down, and the average for the life of the bonds is about $30 a year. So again, that's on the $100,000 assessment, and you can scale that up, scale that down if you want. It's important to note that these are all very estimated and subject to change, but I've been doing this a few years, so I think they're pretty strong. But that's really kind of it. That's it. I don't have any fun drone views or digital fancy pictures, but that's it for me. So I'll be around for questions, but I'm going to hand it over to Rena, And she's going to talk about the fun ways that we could get other funding.
Good evening, Rena Bacalar, Director of Economic and Community Development for the town. I also am the town's grant writer and grant manager. So, some folks have asked me along the way, why aren't we going out for grants for this now? Well, there's some threshold criteria for going out for grants, so I want to talk about that. But we will pursue other revenue sources to help offset the cost of the project. Those sources, nothing's guaranteed. Many of those applications that I will file in the future, they're competitive. So I'm competing with other communities that want a piece of a pool of dollars that the state or federal government or some organization is making available. But before anyone can even apply for a grant, there are threshold criteria. And though that threshold criteria is important, so a project really needs to be what they call shovel ready. And there's lots of sub-detail to all of this, but high points. It really needs to be approved by your community, your legislative authority, and in this case, our charter requires a referendum for this project, so it would have to be approved at referendum. You can understand that a funder doesn't want an iffy project, because if they're competing, if other communities are competing for funding and they give you money and you don't end up using it, you're kind of delaying the use of that money in other communities. So the state and the feds and other funders have gotten very strict about this. We need to have the project have advanced construction drawings. It cannot just be conceptual in order for us to compete. They want to know that the time frame is short, that this thing is ready to go. Because what they don't like to do is set their money aside and have it sit idle for periods of time, particularly if the state, for example, bonds for their funds. Do they want to be paying interest on your project that you don't have out of the ground for 3 more years, not even started, right? So they want to know that you have advanced construction drawings, you've seen concepts here, detailed concepts, but that would need to go to full construction drawings, and so forth. They also want to know that your town council, your legislative authority is supportive of the project, not just of the project, but every application that we submit, the town council has to approve that application going in for submission. Now, our town council's been very supportive when we've looked for grants to offset costs for major capital projects. The Veterans and First Responder Center is an example of that. We've raised $4 million to date in grant funding toward that project, and we're on the road with the help of she's no longer here, our state senator, of raising hopefully some additional funding to finish up that project. But these are the kinds of things that have to happen before we can even consider applying. Now, has Rena been sitting idle? No. I've been researching, talking with funders, telling them about the project, setting the stage for potential asks should the community vote this a yes, okay? And so there are a list of some grants that are out there. Some of these are state sources, some are federal, and I continue to look. I have to monitor those funding sources because the emphasis of their funding changes year to year. Some years they prioritize certain types of projects, other years they prioritize something totally different. So I have to monitor what they're prioritizing, monitor the giving, start the relationship with the funder to talk about the project, seed that positioning. I would call it due positioning for the grant. So an example of that is the third one down. It's called CDBG Small Cities Funding. Those are actually federal dollars that come to the state. Believe it or not, the Department of Housing at the state oversees those dollars. And that funding we're eligible to compete for. And that can be up to several $1 million that we can access. So back a few months ago, we spoke with the Department of Housing preliminarily, and we said, you know, here's a project, if it gets passed at referendum, does this fit? Could this work under this funding? And they gave us some criteria and said, we'll talk further if your referendum passes. And if it does, we will talk about criteria for this, but we feel it could be a good fit. And they pointed to me to a few communities in the state that have gotten some funding through this source for their senior community centers. the point they made to me was interesting, and I shared this with our first selectman when I got out of the meeting, and I believe I may have shared this with you, is that to make that, to be able to go in for that pool of funding in particular, there has to be community use allowed in addition to seniors. They understand it's a senior center, but there has to be community use. And they said they really made that a criteria post-COVID when they saw the need for these types of gathering places increasing. So that's just an example of some of the intel on gathering and the positioning that we're doing so that if this does succeed, okay, we can start to queue up some of those applications. STEEP is Small Town Economic Assistance Program grants. Our state legislative delegation's always behind me when we're crafting those projects, and they can give it an extra push. It's state funding. It is political. It's for towns of under 50,000. State bond funding is always a potential. We did receive some state bond funding. We get quite a bit of it for projects around the community. Our legislative delegation is instrumental in helping us secure those dollars. And that funding is possible, but there's a very detailed process as well there, okay? And we've certainly started, talking about that as a future project should this pass for our community. Member-driven community project funding. These are federal. This is a fancy name for federal earmarks. For years, there were federal earmarks in the budget. Then it went away for about 10 years, and then they brought earmarks back under a grant program. There's a lot more criteria, a lot more oversight now of those funds. But we did receive actually 2 earmarks in the federal budget for the Veterans Center, and that was a long process, but we did. So that's a potential opportunity for us. We watch those funds because from Congress to Congress, they may decide to stop earmarks again, right? So we don't know the future of that, but we're watching that. And we're talking with our federal delegation about this project should the referendum pass. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Energy, and Environmental Protection 319 program. We've gotten a lot of money from them for sort of stormwater infrastructure projects. Long Hill Green, some of the work that you saw done there, that's, people don't know, but that's actually green infrastructure that we've installed there, and it has a stormwater benefit for that area. And those grant funds are a potential for an aspect of this project that they've designed, sort of some of those special infrastructure for stormwater. Am I correct on that, Tom? Okay, and National Fish and Wildlife sounds really strange, right? I know. What does that have to do with this? And somebody in the neighborhood's going, oh my God, they're going to put a pond in, and there's no. National Fish and Wildlife, some of the green infrastructure that you also see in Long Hill Green, that was funded through that source as well. And these are really quirky little pots of money that can help take out costs for a certain aspect of the project. So I continue to look at these and other sources. So this is our approach. We're doing what we can now. If the project gets approved, we will go full steam ahead on some of these applications, okay? So that's all I have to say at this moment, and I think I turn it back to you, Tom. Thank you.
Okay, so we are now, we concluded that part of the presentation. We're going to turn it now and talk about the questions from the audience. So if there is anybody, we've got a card up there. Anyone else? There's a card over here, some more cards here. Yeah, so if you don't want to stay for this part of the presentation, I'm going to wait a couple minutes. Anybody who wants to leave, please get up and go. We don't want to keep anybody here long.
All right, we're good. Usually people can hear me without holding a microphone very close, for those of you who know me. I'm Lori Hayes O'Brien. I am the chair of the Community Facilities Building Committee and have been for quite some time, along with a lot of our other members here. First of all, thank you all for being such an amazing audience. I'm usually sitting here when there's middle schoolers in your seats, and we don't always have as much attention, but this is pretty great, so we really appreciate that. I think the way, obviously there's a big pile of questions here, the hour's getting later, we're going to do our best to get to as many of them as we can. I'm going to quickly go through them. If they've already been answered to some extent in the presentation or in the frequently asked questions, I'm probably just going to reference that and try to get to some that you haven't heard answers to yet. For those who weren't able to get a copy of the FAQs we mentioned at the beginning, or for those who came in later, they will be up on the website, but we're also going to have a sign up at the front of the room here later, and you can leave us your email and we will get those to you as well. We'll answer a lot of the questions, many of the things that have been gone over tonight, but some in a little more detail. So I'm just going to start pulling, we'll see how we do. And I know we asked some people to put their names, we're just trying to have one from each person so everybody gets a turn. It looks like a lot of people have gotten a turn. So I'm going to try to direct it to the panel, so hopefully everybody's paying attention. But I'm going to kind of paraphrase some of them. This one is going to be about the pool, of course, with 10 years ago. That probably starts it off right there. Community Senior Center proposed with a pool and a banquet hall for $17 million. I won't read the last part because I'm not sure who you is, but about opposing it. But I know people are wondering a little bit about why that cost changed. That may fall to you since you're.
Can you read the whole thing that I wrote? I mean, I wrote it.
Well, it says you oppose this. I'm not sure who you is. Okay.
But you can read the whole thing. Don't paraphrase my question, please.
You oppose this due to the effect it would have on that neighborhood. What makes the Grace Church neighborhood any different? And just you shouldn't give me money. I think what I'd like to do is what we're trying to do is keep this factual instead of opinion. So we'll answer the facts part of that. And I don't know if we can reflect on why people opposed it or supported anything here tonight or then, but we can talk a little bit about the change in the price and what the difference would be.
So, when the pool was a part of the center, particularly at Churchill Road property, some of the concerns with the neighbors were very much the same as there being a gym on that particular site, in that the pool of the site wouldn't support the traffic associated with pool activities, swim meets, gymnasium type recreation activities. And there was some truth to that. There was going to be a need for overflow parking, and when the community had voiced outcry about the activity that would be on that site due to having a pool there, the pool was ultimately removed from the program. But it's a little more complicated than that, because at that time there was also a pool subcommittee, a committee that was very focused on developing a community pool. I think you'll recall that there was going to be a pool at the high school, and then that didn't happen. That actually went down before I started working with the community, just before it. And so there was a desire to develop a pool for the community, and the community's needs for a pool were pretty significant. I think you might recall conversations such as, we need an Olympic-sized pool. 6 lanes isn't enough, we need 8 or 10 lanes. We need a diving well. All of these programmatic requirements, which were needs and wish list items, grew to the point where the site wouldn't support it. In addition, there was a desire from the pool subcommittee to have their own standalone facility and it was decided that the pool would no longer be a part of the center. So the reason why the pool was not a part of the center was multifold, part of which being the activity that brought to the site, part of which being the committee's desire to have a pool that was significantly greater than just a senior leisure pool.
All right, this one's pretty straightforward. If the town votes in favor of the center, when will the construction begin and when would it be completed?
So, in a perfect world, if the project is approved at referendum in November, the construction drawing process would start. Ideally, we would be out to contractor bids sometime at the end of the winter. So that would be February, March. Construction would start likely around June of 2026. I think that's the quickest that would happen. And construction of a project of this scale takes about 14 months. It could be a couple months more. So it would be end of the summer of 2027 when it's complete.
I'm just trying to look at any others that say pool, because I think we answer that to the best of our ability right now. Just want to hear with a couple of questions, so I'm just going to read the first one right off. Over 1,000 members, but only 100 parking spaces. How's that going to work? Michelle, can you kind of explain about the 1,000 members and the timing?
So a lot of our members, it depends on what they want to participate in. We have people who are members that never come, but they join to support us, get our newsletter, and want to be part of the community. We have individuals that come every day. We have individuals that come once a month, once a week, and so on. So you're not expecting that many people every day. We also, it's really hard to project because our programs change so often and our members change so often. But if our programs start at 9 a.m., usually by 1 p.m. it is really quieted down, and that's kind of a standard across senior centers. Most of our activity happens between 9 and 1. If everyone's, we have 30, 40 people maybe coming at 8:45 for a 9 a.m. class. Some of them may leave right after, some of them may stay, some may stay all day. So, really they do trickle in and trickle out. It is very hard to give that direct answer. But again, 1,000 members doesn't mean 1,000 people are coming every day. They come when they see a program that they want to attend and they want to be a part of.
I'd also like to point out that the parking count numbers are something that's variable and will be dynamic in its planning. We try and target hard parking, actual paved parking numbers to reflect the everyday usage plus. That's why in the concept design you'd see that there was overflow parking. So there's capacity for 140 actual parking cars parked, but some of that is on lawn. And the goal is to be smart about the number of parking spaces that are hard paved, because it's environmentally friendly to do, to do pervious surface instead of impervious surface for stormwater runoff. So that number can change a little bit over time, but we think right around 100 is the right spot. We also look at other centers that are similar size, similar demand, look at what their daily parking counts are. We also look at national standards for parking counts. So all of that information brought us to about 100 cars as the current target. If we need to grow that, we can, but we would prefer to keep those spaces as unpaved overflow spaces.
Trying to find building one so that you can stop jumping up and down. But there was one here about grants. I know Tarina answered that, so hopefully everybody's satisfied with that. There was one about membership numbers, which Michelle spoke to. This one says, have the environmental and wildlife studies been completed yet?
So environmental assessment has been done on the site, particularly as it's associated with the existing buildings. We have all the hazardous materials assessments. That information was used to inform and educate the cost estimate. So budget numbers, budget monies have been put in place to remediate any hazardous materials on the site prior to construction.
Wildlife.
What's that question about wildlife? We don't have an answer to that question tonight, but it's something that's been talked about, so we can get more information about that. This one says, how do you plan to better communicate that the tax increase is modest? Use of newspapers, advertisements, statements by the mayor. I guess that's you. I actually, because I'm the fast talker, we can answer that. You got handed the explanatory text that has that $30 per $100,000 assessment. At the end of the frequently asked questions, there's a website that you can go on to find your assessed tax pretty quickly. We should find the quickest one to get there. So all that information will be on the website, and any other place that that's available, that will be available. So I think that answers that question. Will other activities from other groups be using the building at the same time that the seniors, which is 9 to 3:30-ish daily, have their hours of activities? And persons that they're thinking about parking. Sean, I can probably, you can speak to that, but we've had that conversation, so.
Yeah, and I also forgot to mention, we do provide transportation to and from the senior center. So depending on the time of year, we do often have up to 20 individuals coming a day on the senior center bus. So they take no parking at all. And a lot of our seniors carpool. We have a lot of couples that come. We have a lot of group of friends that drive each other around. So that's all accounted for. As far as community use during the day, we want to share our building. I know the seniors want programs for seniors, but we depend on the community to support us, to volunteer, to donate their time to us, and so we need to be welcoming. It would be great on days when there's an extra classroom available to see a mommy and daddy and me class. I don't know, when you see this in the library, how many people are in attendance, maybe 8 to 10 people. Something like that would be fantastic to see if it was something that the community wanted. One thing we haven't really been able to do, and I don't want to slaughter her last name, but a young lady by the name of Abby, who's now in her first year of college, did her Eagle Scout project with us, and she worked with the Parks and Recreation Department to build us a new staircase in the parking lot. And her family called and said, hey, can we have our award ceremony for all the scouts at your facility? And we didn't have the space. So it's small things like that that we want to be able to offer back to the community, whether it's in the afternoon or in the evening. But I think small civic groups and small organizations that are looking for a space to meet once in a while or do something special is what we'd really like to be able to offer.
Thank you. Another building question. What are the plans for stormwater management given additional impervious surface and tree removal?
The detailed stormwater management plan will be prepared as a part of the construction document phase. However, we actually presented our concept stormwater management plan to the committee and the council. If anyone's interested in that specific concept, I can get that information to you through the building committee. Actually, I don't know how the process works pre-referendum, but that information is public information. It was presented at the town council meeting and one of the building committee meetings. But in short, most of the stormwater will be captured, treated, stored underground. There will be no detention basin on site, and then it will be percolated slowly over time.
This one is, if the referendum is not approved, what happens to the land the town purchased? Who wants to grab that? It's actually answered in the frequently asked questions I can probably just answer to that. There's no decision that will be made on that, obviously, until this goes through. There will be a decision that the town bodies will make moving forward. Obviously, there are some options. We know that some of those are, but no one has a magic ball to kind of look in to see what that will be. But that will be a decision for the town boards to make, and hopefully make it soon. Let's policy. If you see me putting some of these away, because I see someone saying that we're handpicking, I'm not handpicking, but if it's not a question, if it's instead a statement, I'm really trying to get through this pile of questions and keeping an hour in hand. If you have something else to ask us at the end, most of us will be sticking around. Do you have a projected cost for staffing? This was asked in a couple different ways about staffing, since this would be a continuous and increasing cost annually. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We talked about that in the frequently asked questions a little bit, but what we see as staffing, either one of you?
So at this time, we don't really see that there's going to be much more staffing than we already have at the senior center, because the senior center will move from, obviously, from Priscilla Place to the new building, and all the staffing there will come with it. Are you giving me hands to those? There may be the need for an extra custodian in that building, correct, Michelle? If we see that's the case, we certainly will add that type of staffing. And as far as the community use of the building, again, you know, a lot of those programs, again, are already, you know, staffed by our recreation department and our senior department if there's programs at night that may run there. Any town government events, they will be scheduled through the First Selectman's office, and those don't really require any additional staffing. So again, you know, until we know we have a building here, at this point in time, I can only project and estimate that there will not be much additional staffing necessary. Do you want to add?
I just wanted to point out, you know, we do have a great staff. I think all of our needs are met currently at the senior center, but we rely on volunteers. We have, I think, currently 58 active volunteers who put in thousands of hours for us every year. And that is actually part of a program of a senior center, is volunteers are looking for things to do. So, but they do a lot of the day-to-day that help us get through our day. So we do not foresee adding any more staff. We are looking for more opportunities for our volunteers at the moment.
Great, thank you. This one I know. I understand there's been more than one plan for the senior community center. Anybody that's followed the meetings probably knows that. Is there a safeguard to ensure that option 7 is the plan if it passes referendum? Option 7, as some of us calling it, we keep saying we need to find a better name for it, is the plan that is on the referendum. It's actually stated in the explanatory text purposely, so that is the conceptual plan that would be accepted at that cost. So it is, we can't go back to other ones at this point, but it is conceptual. But that is the plan that's on the referendum. The conceptual plan that's on the referendum is the option 7 that you've seen to this point.
I'd also add that option 7 realized significant financial savings to the project and the community. The other options were more expensive. So there's sort of an indirect protection, meaning if the project were to change back to one of the other schemes or get bigger, there really is no funding to support the project in that different format. So the funding essentially aligns with option 7.
Some trouble reading these. This one actually was answered. Sorry, this is the estimated cost over the next 25 years, which Matt did a great job answering, versus repairing and maintaining the present senior center, which George did a great job answering. So that one goes here. I'm trying to find other building ones.
George pointed out that the estimates to renovate the building as new was approximately $20 million. That's the number George presented versus the $27 million for a new facility.
Our town lacks public meeting space. One of the reasons we started this to begin with. How much meeting space will this project add? I believe by seeing hopefully the interiors, and over here and out there too, that you can kind of get an idea. How we really stress the idea of flexible space. There's some spaces that are actually called meeting rooms. There's a lot of other spaces that can be used as meeting rooms. Flexibility has been the whole movement behind the design. So hopefully that answers that one. There was something about, will the budget allow proper ergonomic seating and bathrooms, et cetera, for the population you plan to serve? We didn't talk a lot about the details of FF&E fixtures, furnishing, and equipment, but this is going to be a completely ADA compliant building. Has to be, needs to be, definitely part of our goal, so I think that answers that, right? You want to add more?
Yes, so will the budget allow proper ergonomic seating and bathroom toilets for the population? Yes, all of the amenities would be designed specifically for active adults, all the way down from furniture and couches and seating and tables to service counters, would all serve the accessible population. As far all the way down to the toilets, we do toilets at comfort height for elderly patrons. That's typical in the center.
You can stay up. Will you be thinking about using solar panels to help with the electric bill?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, yes, we will be looking at alternative energy options for the center. It may be solar panels, it may not be solar panels. Perhaps it's a heat pump system. Ultimately, the building will embody as many green or sustainable initiatives as we can get and get into the budget and solicit subsidies for. But solar panels are a good example because there's really no out-of-pocket cost for solar panels. If you do a power purchase agreement, the ultimate yield to the community is pretty thin. You're better off purchasing them. So that's a discussion that would be had during the detailed development of the project.
This one, some of it was answered, but we can probably highlight some. Earlier estimates were around $40 million. What changed? I think Tom kind of went through the history and where we were at and where we are now, especially after this last option 7 iteration, which just got us down to the 27.1. And the next part of that question is what happens if costs go over 27 million. I believe Matt mentioned this, but that bonding authorization is an NTE, not to exceed. We don't get any more money than that. Even if something costs something more, that means we have to cut something back. So the bond authorization as it's set now is $27,115,000, and we don't get that and a penny. We get that. And hopefully, with Rena's hard work and other cost savings, we'll be able to even use less for that. So, but the not to exceed part is important because I think people think, that will kind of creep up on that. This is another suggestion about not having just a Q&A. I understand. Maybe we'll have an option for that another time. This is about asking about Priscilla Place, which George kind of answered to. Sorry to be going over these quickly. Where's the buffering on the south side? I know you showed it in the pictures, but do you want to kind of focus on that a little bit more about what's happening for the buffering for the neighbors? And this is specifically asking about the measurement of the buffer zone possible.
So this was an image showing the buffering on the south side of the site. You can see there's a low retaining wall because there's grade up. So all of the cars actually sit down from the adjacent property by, probably on average 6 to 8 feet. So visually from grade, the cars and the pedestrians are below the site. Then we're proposing to leave the majority of the existing, these are sort of a pine tree type tree. We will supplement it moving to the west, but then we're proposing a thicker shrubbery at the lower level to thicken up the lower edge of the buffer. This is a concept. I think we've pointed this out at numerous presentations. This is something that we've developed throughout the process of detailing the building and the design. We have flexibility to add fencing or remove fencing. Because this sits below the site, we actually felt that doing a planted buffer on the south side would be more aesthetically pleasing, but we're open to communal suggestions as the project is being developed.
Excuse me, I was talking more towards the road. That was my question.
Oh, it's on the south side, sorry.
What if I find the road by Main Street? There's no buffering. Is it the bus?
Trying to see if we can find a visual.
Go back. By your little garden? Yeah, where's the buffering?
That's it? That's a current
It's been
picture.
asked multiple
Yeah,
times.
that's a current picture. A current picture with that building imposed, so I don't think they put the buffering up in that particular picture.
Yeah.
So I think this image sort of shows what we have at this particular point. So we're showing a planted buffer at the edge of the lawn area, but that could be improved. And between the parking area and this residence, we have the flexibility to really make that buffer what it needs to be. So perhaps we can get some direct feedback from the neighbor, work with them on what that buffer is.
You know, we'd like to get to everybody's questions, and it would be nice if we could continue to go along as we have been all night. This one says,
I'd just like to make one final comment about that, is that this parking area on that north edge, we're not changing the extent of that parking area. It currently exists right where it is. So we're not changing the buffer, we're not changing the extent of the parking area. We're leaving it exactly the way it is from its size and configuration standpoint. But definitely open to exploring improving that edge.
like this one says, I thought I heard mention of a large outdoor covered patio for outdoor seating. Where is that? If so, it just seems to see the upper smaller patio. I can talk to that little bit quickly. That also was one of the things as this has changed. One of the larger outdoor patio, honestly for the committee, some of that decision was about keeping the neighbors' privacy as much as possible. We didn't know if a large outdoor patio would be infringing on being able to look into some of their yards. So we kind of exited that. We do want to, I know there's another question about outdoor spaces that someone asked. And I know there is some to the side where you're hopefully going to be able to encourage some other outdoor areas, but in keeping within the neighborhood concept. So that's going to be programmatically how that kind of works out when this all falls into place. But that larger patio that was on an earlier iteration is no longer there. That green area that you see, and I know from other pictures it can be deceiving. It is a roof. It's going to be a pretty roof with greenery up there, but it is not going. There's just going to be a walkway for people to be out there, and not really a place where people will gather. So that answered a couple of those.
Lori, it showed one patio that was outdoors, isn't it?
Yeah, the small one on this side.
Can that be covered so that people aren't sitting in the sun?
Can that outdoor patio be covered?
Yeah, so right now this exterior porch right here is covered. This one is not. It could physically be covered. That's not a bad idea.
Most of us should not be sitting in the
We can talk to those details later. I thank you for the
Never tried
question.
to chase the shade of those umbrellas, it's,
Yeah, so I should point out too, I'm gonna keep saying conceptual because conceptual. So all the pictures you saw inside, these outside, they're conceptual drawings. It's gonna be a work in progress with input from people who actually use it about those kind of details. So I think that's important. None of this is set in stone as far as those specific details. This is another question about if it's not passed, what's gonna happen to the properties. That's again something that will be decided down the road. This is another one about the outdoors. I think we just talked about that. What our options are for that. Again, more decisions down the road. I think I already answered this one about the membership. This was a little bit, and I think Michelle answered that, but I don't know if you did or it needs clarification about do seniors pay for membership, lunch, transportation, and activities? Can you just really quickly break down how the fees work?
And if I can go back really quickly just to talk about outside programming, Ronnie and I every year let's get a food truck and have a huge celebration in our food court or our patio out in the back. And no one ever sits outside. Everybody goes inside. We have very few people that want to spend time outside in the elements. So I think once in a while our Tai Chi class on a great day will go out and exercise. But even if we tried to plan an outdoor event, we know our members are going to be bringing the party inside. So I don't think we as a senior center would be offering any big, large programming out there. Membership fees currently, to join the senior center, it is $10 a year for a resident. And we do allow non-residents, they do pay $30 a year. Both of those fees were raised, I believe, last year or the year before. They've been very low for many years. Some programs and activities you do pay for. Our lunch program is federally funded. It's under the Older Americans Act. So we are reimbursed a certain amount per lunch that we serve. And our attendees are asked to pay a suggested donation. And what they can't pay, the center is able to make up with the wonderful contributions you all here provide us. Trumbull is a very generous community and we're very lucky to be able to offer that program. So no one is turned away for the inability to pay, whether it's for membership or for our lunch program. We do charge non-residents more fees. We offer them very few spaces in our programs, but there are some fees. We also get grants for our social services program and for transportation. And I believe there is a $2 fee for each ride, depending on what you do.
This one asks why we're not using St. Joe's Manor for the senior center. I know that's what goes to Rena.
So the St. Joseph's Manor property is under a letter of intent for purchase. Currently, they have a short time period to do their diligence, so that could change down the line, but generally speaking, within 1 week of the announcement, I had 6 people interested in the property. The people that currently have it under a letter of intent would use the property in similar manner that it's currently used, not exact manner, but senior type things. And that property would receive heavy investment in improvement. So it's not something that the town, in my opinion, should look at purchasing or taking off the tax roll. It has tremendous potential to be something that integrates into the neighborhood fairly easily due to the existing use and to raise value significantly. So if they put, for example, $30 million into renovating and fixing up the area, that's going to speak to our grand list, right? Commercial grand list. So we have to focus there. Thank you.
This one I think we may have already answered, but it talks about how the Hillcrest Middle School project had funding to mothball, demolish the existing Hillcrest Middle School. So this project does not seem to include that. So what are the short-term and long-term plans for Priscilla Place and at what future cost? This question I think comes up in different ways, but I wanted people to know that it's really along the same answers about those decisions to be made. And what will happen with any future buildings that are not being used. This one asks, this is Weathertown, Mark, to paint the corners of the building on the property to give citizens an understanding of the size. And this came up earlier, but, did I just stop talking? This is talking about giving an idea of the size of the building before it's built. How does that work in the construction process? Like people trying to get an idea of the building before it's built. I know people have asked us to paint the corners at times or kind of stake it out, but is that something that happens down the line as those decisions are made, or how does that typically work?
So that could happen at any time. The town could engage their surveyor to put some stakes out at the corners or do an offset or do some spray paint indications. That's something that we could work with town staff on.
A lot of these are asking the same question in different ways. This is about use, current cost, how big is the whole that site? And yeah, I think all of these. What are plans for security? I don't know if Michelle, you want to talk about what hopefully we'll see differently than what you have now.
I think we've talked about this before as well, as just, if you remember, you have a card to swipe in and out of the facility. I think that's probably going to be the biggest bet, right? I mean,
Well, the center will have many features that are improved in regards to security. Number one, the access points and the drive points will be lit better. Number two, the main entrances to the building will all be card access and building information control. So they can be opened and closed at specific times and locked at specific times. There will be a card access system for members recording who comes and goes. In addition, there'll be a closed circuit television system for the building that will monitor the entrances, the stairs. So everybody coming and going to the building and the site will be monitored on a video basis. Additionally, it'll be fully fire alarmed, which is normal. And the access road to the rear of the site will have a security gate so that in the evenings and after hours or when programming is complete, access to the rear parking area can be prohibited so that cars won't be going back there after program times.
So trying to put these into some categories that we haven't answered. We had a goal of being done by 9 o'clock, and I know we didn't meet that goal. So we're probably just going to answer a couple more. A couple of things I want to say, and then I know Vicky will have some last words, is that if your subject of your question was not answered in the presentation, in the FAQs, or by the bulks of questions that came here, we still want to hear from you. We can add your questions to the FAQs. We can get them to the people that need them and get them answered. Those can go to Town Hall. My name is on, there's very specific questions about our building committee and our process. You can always reach out to me. My name is on the website, and my email is there as well. The bulk of the other questions, as I can see, there's pool questions, which we've kind of talked about as much as we can, I think, at this point. I don't see a lot of other questions specifically for Tom and Rocco that are building specific. I was trying to get to most of those. And the other bulk of the ones I would say are about taxes, which we all thought we'd be talking about, of course. And I don't know what other answer people can give you. I know people are saying, we have a lot, what is this going to do? I don't know if you want to answer that in your closing remarks or respond to that in some way in your closing remarks, but other than the factual information we've been giving you, which is what this meeting was kind of be about, it's hard to answer that in this forum. I would say the main other questions were basically about senior center activities and fees and what goes on there. The building itself, there was one question, and I think Vicki, you tried to jump up to answer this, but how much trouble is Priscilla Place really in, and are we in, is if OSHA did an inspection, would we be in trouble? I know that Public Works works really hard to keep us out of that trouble, but unfortunately that work takes a lot of our money to do it. The maintenance costs for that building is a big issue. Yes, please.
The building is not in trouble. The building systems are reaching end of life. So things such as the failure of the air conditioning, that is something that we need to make a decision. Are we going to invest several $100,000s to revamp an air conditioning system in an old building or not? So from a safety perspective, that's something that we monitor. We do not delay investments that we need to make to keep the building safe. But what we have delayed are investments such as replacing windows and making infrastructure major capital investment changes.
All right, I think really the only other two general ones that I'm getting a sense out of these is if we could give a little more information about what the town's vision of potential hours or how this is run, that came up in two, and then a little bit more about tax increases that, I don't know what the good answer is to that, but maybe Vic, if you want to answer those and then maybe go into your closing remarks, and I'll remind people again that we will take more questions and try to get them to you, and to leave your information if you weren't able to get a frequently asked question flyer.
So the hour is getting late. I don't want to prolong this any longer. People are tired. I'm just going to say, because this is a question that came up a number of times during the building committee meetings, and I'm going to just give some hours, tentative hours of operation, and this is just very tentative. I don't necessarily want people to come back at me at some point and say, but you said. So I'm just going to give, this is for the neighbors because they've asked this question many, many times. We've bounced around some times here, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Fridays 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Sunday 10 to 3. So again, these are not fixed hours at this point, but I think it's a starting point to have a conversation with the neighbors as well, and for community use and senior use. So that's
7 days a week. It'll be open 7 days a week.
okay. Again, I said when I made the statement, I'm putting this out there because you've asked, okay? And it's not open all day, 7 days a week, okay? So again, we will have further discussion about this as if we have a project. We don't have a project yet. The town has to vote yes, or a majority of the people. Okay, so that's where I'll stop with that. I'll just give some very quick closing remarks, about 1 second actually, because I know everybody wants to go home. So I just want to say thank you for coming tonight. I want to say thank you to our great panel of discussion people here, our presenters, please give them a round of applause. As you can see, a lot of work goes into something like this, obviously, because we want to present as much information as we can to the public. Again, to inform people so that when they vote, they make an informed decision based on the facts. So again, thank you for coming. And the FAQs does have a site, a link there that you can go to check your assessment if you don't know what it is. And if you don't understand all of that, call my office. If you're having trouble understanding the tax impact information that Matt presented, which I think he did a great job, but if you have trouble understanding that, call my office. We're here to help. So thank you again. Be safe. We'll see you soon.